The following podcast contains explicit language.
Thank you for joining us. This is Danny Voss.
And I'm Paul Wilson.
And this is the Diesel Performance Podcast, bringing you a great episode today.
Absolutely. Danny, I'm really excited for this one. We've talked about it. We did a little promo video about it. I think a lot of our listeners are kind of ready and expecting this. We're finally rehashing the calibrated powers, or the old Cummins tuners, Cummins Turbo Shootout.
And we took 5 of the best turbochargers on the market, entry-level chargers, and we broke it down. And,
absolutely.
You know, what inspired us to do this is we wanted to bring factual information to our end users and our listeners and everybody on social media so they know exactly how to choose the right turbocharger for them.
Totally correct. Yeah, absolutely. As everybody knows, Danny and I work over at Calibrated Power and Duramax Tuner, and we get a lot of phone calls. And this actual shootout, this actual test, it really took place about 2 to 3 years ago. 2 years ago, I think we actually got into it, and we were just at the time getting a ton of calls, Danny, about what's the best turbo.
Yeah, what's the recommendation?
Yeah.
So what we did was I actually had somebody call up and make a few calls and try to figure out what is best, call all these manufacturers. And we wanted to know what the best bang for your buck was.
That's right. Absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because I was actually the schmuck who got to make the calls. So they set me down. They said, hey, we want the manufacturers to recommend a charger. We don't want to pick them out, because that would be kind of biased. They would be going already based off of our assumption. So we want to call and give all of the manufacturers the same customer to talk to, and then let them recommend a turbo based on what they think is best. They're the experts, right? Mm-hmm. So what I did is I called every one of them and I said, I have a 07 5.9 liter Cummins. I have a built transmission. It's my daily driver. I do tow sometimes with it, and that's important to me. I definitely have to have something that's not going to be a ton of lag, because it is my daily driver. I need to be able to control EGTs. I obviously want to make more power than stock. That's why I'm spending this type of money on it. And beyond that, I need a little bit of room to grow. Now, I told all of them my budget's not crazy. I said there's a reason I'm not doing a twin kit for $3,500. I only have about $2,000 to have this charger on my truck.
They're entry-level chargers.
Right? Like, it's your basic upgrade stock fuel. That's what I told them all I had at the time, because they all wanted to know, and they all wanted to know application. And I will say, everybody I talked to had great customer service. So it's not like you could factor customer service in solely. Some of the people I talked to were better salesmen than others. That was very obvious up front, which for me, being in sales, I think would make an impact. But I don't think that's what most consumers care about. What most consumers wanted to know was the raw data. They wanted to get beyond the hype.
Mm-hmm. What their friends said.
Exactly. So that gave us a chance to really kind of dive in and start dealing with the different chargers that were recommended to us. So from ATS, they recommended an Aurora 3000. They said that'd be a good match. Yeah, the purple one, right? Like, because that's the only thing they're purple, I promise. But so we got an Aurora 3000 shipped to us.
And then we also went with the BD Performance Killer B. Engineered diesels, 63 millimeter. It's an S300 center section.
Absolutely. Chris at ED, really great guy, extremely knowledgeable, probably my favorite person to talk to about turbos, unquestionably. Fleece sent us out the Cheetah, and Industrial Injection shot us the Silver Bullet 6280. Very popular turbo, probably one of our favorite from a tuning standpoint to tune with in single turbo applications. They respond very well. We've seemed to always had good luck with customers who have purchased one of those, and our tuning have always kind of worked out as a good match.
And then, of course, what I'm a big fan is our stock turbo.
The HE351.
It's not a slug.
I'll tell you what, man, there was a lot of surprise that came out of this test. One of them was the overall performance of an HE351. I think that's a big thing that the data will show. Speaking of the data, if you are interested, please jump on to calibratedpower.com, click on the Cummins Turbo Shootout link, and that will give you a chance to just type in your email address, and it'll let you download the actual full, I think it's a 17 page documentation of the entire test. So you can see everything right down to the physical dimension attributes, to all of the testing that was done on the dyno, to all of the data, the blade count. It's insane how much detail Nick Pregnitz and the boys at Calibrated Power really went into on that one. Speaking of, I think this is a great time to maybe just give a break, and we'll give a moment for our sponsors.
This is Nick with Calibrated Power Solutions. If you can appreciate the kind of advice that Paul and Danny are giving our listeners on this episode and would appreciate that kind of personalized advice, I would encourage you to check out calibratedpower.com and duramaxtuner.com, where you can get a hold of our guys and get that kind of personal attention 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. 815-568-7920. Back to the podcast.
Let's talk about the truck, the mule, so to speak, that we chose for this test.
Man, that test mule, I think that's a good way to put it. That bitch got to work out.
Oh, yeah. Beat it like a mule.
It was, I mean, to set up the testing, it was in the middle of summer when this all happened. So it was 90 degrees in a non-air conditioned room with a dyno running, in a very small room with a dyno running and an exhaust system that was really just a big flex pipe hanging out the back with a pallet on it, so it didn't come up. It was wild.
Rich can attest. I'm sure he was sweating it out that day.
That a lot of video. You, Nick, yeah. Rich is our editing producer here. So Rich, Owen Powell, the lead tech, did a lot of work on the dyno, and then of course Nick Pregnitz at Calibrated Power did a lot of work on the dyno as well. So those three really just had, I'd say, probably the worst 2 weeks I could imagine with playing with turbos. I mean, a lot of fun getting the data, but they didn't get to do a ton of drifting and drag racing with it. They were there for testing.
Yeah, it's not all strippers and burritos when it comes to work.
But Danny, you were talking about the test mule here. As I had said before, it's a 5.9 liter Cummins. It was an 07, and it's kicked off with a built trans, and that's where the build got started.
Yeah, a triple disc torque converter, a Garand upgraded valve body to hold the line pressure and keep it constant. And, that's important. This truck is a truck that you'd see driving around your city.
It really was. I mean, it really was a daily driver truck. It was a small lift, but all white, quad cab, short bed. It was a pretty normal truck. Now, there was some love underneath the hood. I'm sorry. Head studs, O-ringed, 110-pound valve springs, an S&B intake.
Also, an intake horn. We used a 12 mil pump. And also 45 over injectors, and then we had to use 100% over injectors on certain tests, and we'll get into that.
Absolutely, yeah. Some of them required a little more fuel to get all the information we needed out of them. Of course, we had a 5-inch exhaust on it, and then for our actual testing, we used that CTS monitor with an EGT probe and a boost pickup probe. So
it gave us great data. The Edge monitor gave us the data we needed to keep the test consistent. And one thing that I wanted to note, this is an 0759 with about 165,000 miles. The truck's definitely been worked a little bit. It's our test mule here. We put it through the ringer. Also, it's a Lone Star Edition. So I don't want people to have a misconception that a Lone Star Edition will have more horsepower than your regular 325 horsepower truck that comes from the factory those years. All a Lone Star Edition is basically a bighorn that was bought in Texas originally.
Really? Mm-hmm. So they just rebadged it a Lone Star in Texas?
Yeah. So it was originally purchased in the state of Texas.
Gotcha. Good heads up from the old car salesman.
Yeah, I still like have it.
Still have a little info out there for people, right?
But it's really nice to know that this truck is something that's obtainable for our end users. This is something that people would normally have. The way it's set up with the head and the valve springs and everything is something that I would personally want for a daily driver.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mild build is what I would call it. I mean, a 12 mil pump, a little bit heavy for your normal daily driver, but it's not a bad way to go. I got to drive the truck a lot before the test procedure when it had twins on it. It was an S475 stocker twin kit. It was a badass motherfucker to drive, to be honest with you, even on 45% injectors. It was a very reliable 750 horsepower setup. And that was one of the things that was considered as we were kind of designing this test, is somebody who has $2,000 for a turbo probably doesn't have a built motor. They probably have, a little bit less than a built motor. So I think that was a good place to get them started. Now, the testing is something that I think really sets this comparison apart from your regular daily driver review. It wasn't, like I said before, these tests weren't just let's slap different turbos on or ask 5 different guys how much they like their truck.
Because they're all going to say, I love my truck.
Right? Everybody says, I made the best decision. So, of course, you should make the same decision. That's just normal. We needed to see something that was standardized.
Like you were from Missouri, from the Show Me State. But with the 3 tests we did was the most important tests, the spool up test on all the Chargers, the towing test, and also what everybody wants to know is what kind of peak power are we getting out of these 5 Chargers?
So this gave us a chance to do an independent, unbiased review of these 5 different aftermarket turbochargers compared to the stock Charger and really see what's the truth out there behind single turbo applications and what's the best for each consumer.
And we wanted to try to make it so the only variable really was indeed just the Charger.
Absolutely. And that was the goal all along, was to compare just the turbo. What was going to be different? So again, to download more information or to jump ahead on the information that we're going to be releasing in our next episode, please jump on to calibratedpower.com and download the Cummins Turbo Shootout. Just enter your email address and it'll allow you to grab the 17 pages that cover absolutely every fact we collected. This has been Paul Wilson.
And I'm Danny Voss.
Thanks for joining us.
The Diesel Performance Podcast is brought to you by Calibrated Power Solutions, home of DuramaxTuner.com, developer of performance engine and transmission calibrations for a wide variety of late model diesel powertrains, including the Duramax, Cummins, John Deere, Jeep, and many more. For more information and the best customer service in the industry, check out calibratedpower.com or call 815-568-7920.